All right, so let's start off in room C529. This is our basic shop. This is where you're going to be doing all of your OEAP shop projects. We'll start over here. Now the sequence that I'm showing you in the stations is not the sequence that you'll be working on everything. It's just the sequence that I'm actually walking around the room here. So over here we have some the whiteboards. The whiteboards are doing controls of like doorbells and push buttons and relays. Over here for the orange boards, these guys are additional relay boards in that you have the push buttons on the side here controlling the relay, and the relay will ultimately control the LED lights at the top there or the motor there. Each of these connections here are just the quick connects, so you can quickly wire up your projects as your instructors provide you with the guidance for each of these stations. Okay, so we have some relay controls over here. While some people are working over here, you can be working over here on the conduit stations. So first thing to note is that we have the threaders and the cutters over here. So we have hydraulic threaders and cutters. Those are being used for the rigid piping. So there's a number of different types of piping they'll be working with. You'll be working with EMT, so electrometallic tubing, which is a smaller, thinner conduit like we see on the wall. So let's start with that. So here you can see that for the two plugs here, there is some EMT that's coming down here doing a 90, doing an offset here to the wall, doing another 90, and then coming back to each of the plugs here. So you are using the conduit benders that are on the walls here, and you're doing a number of offsets or 90s or box offsets, and you'll see them around the room here with the in our classroom, in that the contractors that have wired everything up have made use of the EMT around the room. And so we have junction boxes at the top here going to plugs and to switches around the room there. So you're learning how to do those bends and how to make it as neat and professional looking as possible. In addition to the EMT projects that you're doing, you'll also be working with the rigid, so that's where you'll be using these cutters and threaders. And so the rigid piping looks like this. You can just make out that the wall of the tubing is quite a bit thicker, and you can make out that the ends have been threaded, whereas the EMT you'll use fittings that just use a set screw to connect to. With this one here, you can see that they've done a couple box offsets on either side, and they've done a larger offset in order to get around some obstruction there. So a lot of people kind of freak out on the amount of math that you're going to be doing in the electrical trade. Everything in the electrical trade can be explained with a right angle triangle. So the most math that you're doing, the most difficult math that you'll be doing is just trigonometry and Pythagorean's theorem. Okay, in addition to the rigid piping and the EMT that we just talked about, you'll also be doing some PVC piping. So obviously you can't bend this plastic tubing with a bender, so you'll be learning how to heat it up properly without scorching the outside, and then creating bends. You'll use this PVC piping for any exterior wiring that you're going to be doing. And obviously it comes in different sizes. You'll be working on 1/2 inch, but it goes all the way up to 2 inches there. Okay. In addition to that, you'll also be doing what's called a concentric bend. So here we have a larger conduit here, and you're doing this in small little bends. So you'll see that over here, hopefully I'm not making you dizzy, over here we have some hydraulic benders. And so you're using the hydraulic benders to do these segmented bends, so small, minute bends in the pipe in order to ultimately get a nice 90. And then if you had a number of other pipes that were there that were matching with this, then each of them would have the exact same angle and would be lined up perfectly in line with each other there. Okay, you'll also notice that as we go through that we have cleaners at each of the stations here. And I failed to mention, but as you walk into the room, we do have hand sanitizer, and there'll be hand sanitizer located all the way around the room. And we do have enough room for social distancing between each of the stations. And in most of our classes, we've reduced the number of students in the class in order to maintain that social distancing. Here in the classroom, this is normally where you would be doing your learning. But during COVID, obviously, we'll be doing most of the instruction online. So you'll be doing instruction online with your shop teacher. And then once he's gone over the basics on each of the different stations each week, then you'll come in and you'll be working at different stations. So some people will be working on the pipe bending, where others will be working on the relay controls that we just saw. And then we'll have others over here in the residential wiring section. So here we have just standard wood frame construction. And you can see that there's boxes mounted at various heights here for switches and plugs and lighting. So your instructor will give you different scenarios where you have two different locations that the light is supposed to be controlled from, or you're switching a receptacle. And so you can see here that there's one station here that the students are working on. And we try to introduce as many different wiring systems as possible, primarily the ones that you'd see in a residential setting. So here you'll be working on Romex, so your standard conductors that you'd see in the house. And you'll also be working on what's called BX. So this one is a metallic tubing, and you can see that the conductors come out here. Each of the stations that you're working on and each of the different scenarios that your shop teacher has provided, they'll be asking you to provide the appropriate code for each installation as well. So the hope is by the end of the basic or OEAP program that you have a really good understanding of all of your boxes, all of your wiring systems, how to hook everything up for various locations, and the applicable codes for those installations. All of the components that are required for these guys are right here. So here we have our outlets, so receptacles, we've got lights, and then we have our various switches, right? So we have single pole and three-way switches there, and all the boxes that you'll need for each of the installations there. In addition to that, we've got a number of fittings that you can make use of. So by the time you're done, you should have a good understanding of all the different names for the switches, all the various names for the boxes that you would see in a residential setting. Okay, in addition to these stations right here, you can just see, if I just walk through this wall here, that we're also going to have you working on metal studs. So obviously the wood studs are what you find in a standard home, but in a condo you'll have the metal studs. So you can't use the Romex, you'll be using the BX conductors. And again, you'll have the plugs and switches and lighting boxes, and your shop teacher will give you various scenarios to wire up. If we move over here, then we also have some stations here where we have a mock-up of a panel. So if we open this guy up, there you'll find that there's a panel in here, and there's various types of wiring systems here. So again, if I just scroll over here, then we've got again some plastic tubing that you'd see in the condos. Then we've got again the Romex conductors here and the BX conductors right here. And again, various scenarios that are being given by your shop teacher for the wiring that's required here. On the bottom here, it looks like we've got our bonding of the panel. Then we've got a dryer and stove receptacle. So you'll be learning how to size the appropriate conductors, what the color of the cable looks like, and how to wire up each of the receptacles properly. Then when you're wiring up the panel, your instructor is looking for nice, neat wiring, terminations that are appropriate, and then tying in your neutrals to the neutral bus there. And again, all of the applicable codes that go with each of these installations. On the top here, it looks like we have a timing circuit at the top here. Then we've got some flush-mounted tubing here for flush-mounted installations, and the boxes that go with each of them for the switches and the lights or receptacles. Here we've got a metallic tubing, and down below we have something called liquid tight. So these guys are both a flexible metallic tubing This one just has the metal. This one has a plastic coating on the outside there with the applicable rain-tight connectors on them. And then just below we have some surface mount wiring as well. So you'll see something like this sometimes for receptacles, and other times you'll see this where you have lighting systems that click into this to provide your line and neutral connections for your lighting. Okay. On the side here we have a meter, and once you're done wiring everything up, then your shop instructor will juice up that station, and they're always looking for the clean, neat wiring, that your wiring is correct for that installation, and that you know the applicable codes for that installation. And then finally, just to show you, we also have an electric bender as well. So if time allows, your instructor will cover how to use the electric bender. And this one does the same bends as we saw with the hand bender. But obviously, you're not going to be, unless you've been to the gym quite a bit, you're not going to be able to do to do 1.5 to 2 inch conduit. So your instructor will walk you through how to use this electric bender to make the same 90s offsets and box offsets on various types of pipe. So it's a lot more active when the students are in here, but hopefully you can see that there is enough room for social distancing in each of the stations here, that there are various stations here where you're going to walk through all the different types of wiring and piping systems that you'd see in a residential setting. So basic is primarily looking at residential settings, but you'll also be touching on the same wiring systems that you see in a commercial setting as well. Okay, I'll stop the video here, and then I'll just walk across the hallway here, and I'll show you the intermediate shop next.